Hey guys, just a quick reminder, if you do want to get an increased discount on your G Fuel order, right now COD MW will get you 30% off pretty much everything on the site, but only until the 26th. So if you want to pick up a new tub, shaker, or anything else for that matter, now is definitely the best time to do so. And now on to today's video. So by now we all know that the overall pace of play here in Modern Warfare is definitely a lot slower than what we've seen recently, especially after coming off of Black Ops 4. And it's generally a lot slower than some players would like. But that doesn't mean every game is just full of people pitching their tents and setting up camp. And while it's not the favored playstyle this year, let's say, rushing is certainly viable and can be extremely effective in quite a few situations. So today we're breaking down some of the best class setups for players who specifically want to play a bit more aggressive. But before we jump into that, if you are new here, hey hi, how you doing? Whether it's news, updates, or just general intel, if it is Call of Duty related, I'm covering it here on the channel, so feel free to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all of that. And of course, if you enjoyed the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like rating on it, as it would be much appreciated. And now let's get into the best class setups for playing aggressive here in Modern Warfare. So, the first setup we have here today is going to be the run and gun setup that's great for players who want to do nothing but run around and just hunt for kills from the start of the match all the way until the end of it. I found this setup works really great in standard modes, it's solid in cranked, and it also works really well in ground war too. So you really have a perfect all-around setup here. First and foremost, our primary is going to be the MP5. It is easily the best SMG. It has great mobility, great damage, and is perfect for a run and gun playstyle. Now, my attachment setup here consists of the subsonic integral suppressor, as it increases the mobility and makes the entire class a bit more stealthy, since it removes any and all visible tracers alongside the enemy skulls when you take out an opponent. Then I've got the FSS close quarters stock, as it also helps with the mobility, the 10mm 30-round mags as they bump up the damage and the range of the weapon, making it even more effective overall, the stippled grip tape, which is a staple here on the channel at this point with its mobility increases, and then lastly, sleight of hand so you can reload and get back into the action a bit faster. Now, all of those attachments on the MP5 will end up increasing the accuracy, the damage, and also the mobility, while the range, fire rate, and control all slightly decrease. But ultimately, the MP5 is a melt machine and fits an aggressive playstyle in the absolute best of ways. Then for our secondary, keeping on the theme of just going all out and rushing non-stop, we've got the M4A1. So yes, overkill is in play here, and with this setup I'm using the Corvus Custom Marksman Barrel as it increases the range and the control, the Forged Tac CQS stock for its mobility increases, the Operator foregrip for even more recoil control, then the stippled grip tape and sleight of hand for the same reasons as before. Now, we all know by now just how lethal the M4A1 is by nature, and this setup ends up increasing the accuracy, the range, the fire rate, the mobility, and also the control, and it actually doesn't end up decreasing any of the stats shown, which in this case takes this weapon to a whole new level of dominance. Now, since we are breaking down the full setups here, jumping over into the perks, obviously in perk 1 as stated I am using overkill, but this setup is kind of the odd one out and you'll see why here momentarily. I then have Ghost in perk 2 so I can stay a bit more hidden and stealthy as I'm running around, and then in perk 3 I'm using Shrapnel, as that is going to give me an extra lethal grenade, which when combined with C4 as the equipment, allows you to have a seriously effective equipment setup that can actually bypass EOD and just wreak havoc on the enemy team. Then of course, to wrap up the class, I do also use Stim in the tactical spot, so I can manually heal as I please and just get back into the action a bit faster. So all around, this run and gun setup is a seriously formidable one that is going to be able to compete with the best of the best pretty much all the time. Moving on though, the next setup today is going to be based around going on some higher streaks and just racking up those kill counts. So we do see some slight adjustments from the previous class, but this one is definitely another great choice for aggressive play. Now here we're using the MP7, which I would say is the second best SMG in the game right now behind the MP5, as it has a really great fire rate, so CQC engagements are a breeze with this thing, but it also has a very surprising range, so you can actually use it in some medium and long range fights too, and find a decent amount of success with it. So my attachment setup here consists of the FSS Recon barrel for its range and control buffs, the 5 milliwatt laser, although the tac laser is a great choice as well, as both end up increasing the ADS speed. I then have the FSS close quarters stock, as it does the same, and then once again the combination of the stippled grip tape and the sleight of hand weapon perk. Now once again you will notice that there are no decreases on the stat sheet, as the accuracy, the range, the fire rate, the mobility, and the control all increase, leaving this MP7 setup to be one of the best you can actually create. Then for my secondary here, this really is not nearly as important as before since we're not using overkill this time around. So if I'm not going out of my way to pick up an enemy's weapon off the ground to use that as a sort of temporary secondary, my go-to is either the 357 Magnum or the 50 GS, just because they are both super powerful pistols, and I should add the 357 with the snake shot rounds is an absolute beast. However, I honestly don't really use the pistols all that much, so they're not really a vital part of the setup. What is though is that change to EOD in perk 1, as this is going to help with keeping that streak alive since explosives are going to be dealing a lot less damage to you in the long run. As we know, the nade spam and the just abundance of claymores and proximity mines is pretty rough to say the least, so EOD ends up being a major part of this class. Then the remainder of the class is actually the same as before, with Ghost, Shrapnel, C4, and the Stim. Continuing on, the next setup that we've got today is simply based around speed. Like if Lightning McQueen were a Call of Duty setup, this is the Lightning McQueen setup. Yes, I did actually use that as a reference there. Anyways, the primary here is going to be the Bison, my personal favorite weapon at the moment, and on it I'm using the 8.7-inch aluminum barrel as it helps increase the mobility, the tac laser or the 5 milliwatt laser once again, whatever you prefer, the Corvus skeleton stock for its mobility boosts, and then we have sleight of hand and the stippled grip tape once more. Although sometimes I do end up swapping out sleight of hand for the muzzle brake, depending on the map if it is a little larger. But essentially with this setup we see the fire rate slightly increase because of sleight of hand, and then the mobility increases an absolute ton, making this one of the most agile weapons in the game right now, but the range does end up decreasing ever so slightly, but ultimately this setup is meant for CQC engagements, so that decrease there is not the end of the world by any means. Now, the remainder of this setup is actually going to be the exact same as it was on the streaking class with the MP7, so all the same perks of EOD, Ghost, and Shrapnel, and the same equipment as well with either the Desert Eagle or the Magnum for a secondary. So this setup ends up really excelling in those CQC engagements as I mentioned, so if you're playing Cranked, or specifically if you're playing on a map like Shoot House or Shipment or even Hackney Yard, the Bison is honestly perfect for spraying and praying while on the go. Then, jumping into our final rush heavy setup for today, we have the heavy hitting setup, as this one is really based around, in the words of one Jeremy Clarkson, speed and power. For this one we're using the Ram 7 DLC weapon, since it is one of the more agile rifles we have available, and frankly it is really powerful considering its higher fire rate and decent mobility. Now for this setup we are using the XRK Ranger barrel as it helps with the control and the range, the tac laser once again, the GI Mini Reflex since personally I don't like the iron sights, but if you do I would then highly suggest using a barrel built for speed. And also one last time for this video, we've got the grip tape that is stippled and the hands that are slight. All of this together ends up increasing the accuracy, the range, the fire rate, and the control, and ironically, it ends up decreasing the mobility ever so slightly. But honestly, when you are rushing around, between the ADS speed and the overall movement speed, the Ram can be a very aggressive rifle to use, and it is very efficient in, say, Cranked or on smaller maps like Shoot House and Hackney Yard. Oh, and also, if you do end up using a stock instead of that optic attachment, then the mobility won't end up dropping down, so there is that option too. Then, for the remainder of this class, I am once again using all the same things as before between the secondary, perks, and equipment, so it's just copy and paste there. All around though, between these 4 class setups, if you are someone who likes to rush around and just play very aggressive, you will most certainly find quite a bit of success while using these. So with all of that being said, those are some of the most effective rushing setups you can use here in Modern Warfare, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video or if you just found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like rating on it, as it would be much appreciated. And of course, if you are new here and you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the world of Call of Duty, including all the latest news and intel, updates and leaks, and pretty much everything else in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I post a new video. As always, if you do want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code IMMORTAL on all Scuff, G Fuel, Control Freak, and Respawn products. All of those links can be found down in the description below, and once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.